Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's episode with the Moana Nui podcast. This is episode 77. I can't believe it. But for those that are new to watching the podcast, before we introduce our very special guest, we're going to introduce ourselves. Uh, I am Dana. I am of course, co-host with the Moana Nui podcast. But outside of Moana Nui podcast, I am a event cosplay and con staff photographer. I am a event planner, executive assistant for my full-time job, a voice actor, and a whole lot more. And now I'm going to hand it over to the founder of the Moana Nui podcast, the Ace Bunkun. She is the Renaissance woman of our time, the lovely, the beautiful, the person I call my sis, the lovely Moana.
Aloha mai kako, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode. Yes, it's been a crazy, busy time, but we are here. We are committed to this podcast. So my name is Moana, and as Dana mentioned, I am the founder of the Moana Nui podcast. I am also a children's book author for the Adventures of Nakoa and Nohea children's book series, editor and publisher here at Burning Spear Comics for the Wildcard Chronicles, a champion and advocate for the independent community, and of course tonight specifically for the women of our community. And I'm really excited to talk to Sue-Ann tonight, and I will go ahead and turn it back over to Dana so she can do the introduction.
All right. Well, we're very excited about today's guest. Sue-Ann Hong joined the Center of Asian Pacific American Women in May of 2018 as interim executive director. As of January 2020, she is the president and CEO. Her career was with State Farm insurance companies for over 28 years, including data processing, diversity and inclusion, corporate business and technology, portfolio management, and P&C auto claims. She infused the philosophy of building trusting relationships, collaborating, and bringing people together to achieve common goals. A 2002 Asian Pacific American Leadership Institute Fellow, she continues her journey as a whole person leader in her belief that it's the journey versus the destination. Her goal is to support the Center of Asian Pacific American Women's vision to build whole person leaders, one person at a time. She is also a certified life coach, and we're proud, as far as I know, I'm very proud that she resides in Atlanta, Georgia. So she's right in my backyard. And now we're very excited to bring her to the front and better and about her organization, Center of Asian for Asian Pacific American Women. Hello, Sue-Ann.
Hello, good evening. How are you both?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for the invitation. Back again. I love Moana Nui and what you guys are doing. And by the way, both of you have like a resume a mile long. So, you know. my rainbow coalition right here.
There you go. Exactly.
I love that.
Hey, that's something about Asian Pacific women. We don't have short resumes.
That's right.
No, we don't. We like to do all kinds of things. We don't do one thing.
Yes,
definitely. Well, of course, our audience, and for those that may or may not know you, we always start the show off by having you to tell about your Pico or your origin story. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from. And can you tell us one fun fact about your hometown?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, again, so appreciate being here tonight. I'm from Seoul, Korea, so I identify myself as Korean American. She, her, hers is my are my pronouns. And I came to the United States when I was 8 years old, and I actually flew by myself. And I remember the most distinguished memory of having to switch planes and going through customs in Hawaii by myself. And at that time, there was a little bit of a gap between, where you get some assistance. I had to figure out which bus to take and all of that on my own. I had a little tag that said where I was going. I was going to my auntie, and so I literally kind of had to manage through that. So, I really learned early on that I could figure things out. And so, not speaking any English, and I went through LA, met my aunt in Chicago, and then we both flew to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So I can officially consider myself a Youper. And for those of you who know Upper Michigan, hopefully you got, I don't know if you've ever heard of pasties, but just a little trivia there. But I think, what I learned was that because my first experience was in a very small mining town, I learned very quickly about how different I was. Mm-hmm. The fact that I was the only Asian person probably they had ever seen. And so it kind of started my journey of this only kind of a feeling. And my aunt moved around a lot. She was a professor, and we moved to multiple towns. And for the most part, it was small town, medium-sized town, and not a ton of Asian people. So I think that really made me learn about how quickly I have to figure things out and adjust to fit in. So that was really kind of a theme, I think, throughout my life and my career. Even when I started at State Farm, there weren't a lot of Asian people where I started in Marshall, Michigan. So, but it really teaches it teaches you how to be resilient, how to figure things out. What do I need to do to fit in? So that's kind of my journey from a perspective of my identity and how that journey really started.
Yes.
That's such an interesting story about going through the airport, because I could totally relate. Back in the day, it wasn't a whole lot. And I'm amazed at 8 years old you were able to do that. So kudos to you.
The lady that was sitting next to me, she told me she was staying in Hawaii. Somehow we could communicate. So whatever bus she took, I took the opposite bus, because I knew she was staying and I was going. So that's how I figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, that's so cool how, like, even at a very young age, understanding how to figure stuff out. And, those were like the early foundational steps for where you are now.
Yes.
However many years later, and all of the trials and things that you have learned since then. And it sounds like you have an amazing aunt. So that's really cool. So, like, we talked a little bit about your aunt and growing up. Who did you look up to? Who inspired you? And how did you find yourself on the business management career path?
Well, first of all, my earliest memory of feeling like total acceptance and love was my grandmother. Actually, I can remember actually sitting, she carried me on her back, and I remember, peeking out and checking things out outside. Like I have the earliest memories of feeling the most loved and feeling the most safe with her. So that feeling, I know. And my aunt, I would say now my mom, I call her my mom now. I think I really admire her because she was single at the time when she adopted me. And, she came to the U.S. and she was getting her master's and PhD at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And she did not get married until I was graduated from high school and into college. So she never got married until, I actually got out of the house. And that sacrifice to give me a better life and an opportunity. And the fact that I remember her teaching extra classes to make, additional money. But at the same time, making sure that I didn't have TV dinner. So she would like
Yeah.
cook on Sundays and freeze everything and have enough food there to make sure that I had my babysitter and I could eat home cooked meals. So like I
Mm.
remember these little things that she'd do that would really make sure that I was okay.
Yes.
And I think that was huge. I do remember too the fact that, she really still could keep a household, take care of me, and still have ambition for herself in terms of
Mm.
moving up in administration. And she ultimately retired as the dean at the Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, which is a HBCU. So she was a dean over
Yes.
library, yeah, science. So that to me really set the tone of what was possible. I think she was just a
Hmm.
fantastic role model.
Yes.
Yeah. How about you guys? Who was your role model? Moana, who was yours?
Um, I think early in my life, it was probably my grandma too. Very much, very similarly. We spent a lot of time with her because both my parents were working career adults. Um, and so she took care of us. My sister and I have so many like just little memories, very similar of like she had a garden in her yard. Everything, a lot of the stuff we ate came straight out of the garden. So very
Mm.
fresh food. Um, and then, like one of the things she would love to make us eat is beets, and to this day I cannot. But but she would like, I would try to be slick and chew it up and just spit it out in my napkin, and she would see, and she's like, "You ain't hiding nothing." She was like, "If you don't eat that, we're not gonna go get ice cream." And I was like, "Oh man." So but she was someone who had worked in the plantations, the sugar plantations, um, in Hawaii. She was a hard charging woman too. Small, very unassuming Filipino and Portuguese lady. But do not mess with her. She's not someone to be messed with. Like she was very very similar to yours. Like made sure worked hard and made sure all of her kids had everything that they needed, and they all had different fathers. I think she had 6 kids, 3 different fathers, but she raised them to never even look at that as anything different. It was still one family, and
Hmm.
that didn't matter. So she was
Amazing.
definitely someone who had a big influence on me. What about
That's
you, Dana?
amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. How about you, Dana?
For me, it's actually two different one. My grandmother, and then also my aunt Karen. My grandmother, same thing. Woman. After she got divorced, she raised my dad and her my two uncles by herself. She, made sure that they went to college, everything. And then no matter where they lived in the United States, like if there's any milestones for us grandchildren, she would travel by car hours to be there. Like I still remember like when I had my sweet 16, she drove all the way here. My first prom, she drove to be there with me for my prom, all that. And she did that with all of us grandchildren. And she was one that she was like really encouraging me to get out, know others, uh, because my parents believed in, you know, making sure we're well rounded. And she really pushes like get to know other kids that, different religions, different looks, ages, everything. And that really set my foundation. And then my aunt Karen is another one that she was a working woman. She did so much. She was in technology, but she was the one, because back then I was horribly shy. Until I got to know you, I would not really talk to you unless it was obligated through school. If I have to be in a group with you, that's the only time I'm gonna deal with you. And
Wow, you
she,
have
when I went off to
evolved.
college, Exactly. and and that was one of her things. She was like, people would not get to know who you truly are until you speak up. And so she
Wow.
helped me get out my shell, and she was just like, you, no one's going to truly understand you 100%, but she said, as long as you bring positivity and joy in everything you do, it's contagious. Someone that may have a bad day, that may bring them up, and you probably won't even know it, and things like that. And you can, it's better for you to have an impact on every person you come across, because all of us um, have a part of each person's life we come a part of, whether it's big or small. So I've always, listened to that and continue to strive for that. Yes, I'm truly, ambivert, but for when I do things like this, because trust me, Moana knows it took me a lot to get. I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this, be in front of the camera versus behind the camera, and just bring all that energy that she's always told me to do, and I've done that, and just take it in full stride. So
I love the fact that we're all influenced by strong women and role models
mhm,
in our lives, because I think that is such a critical impact, especially because we grew up with that,
yes,
and
yeah,
saw that women can really accomplish so much and do so many
hmm,
things. So I think that definitely influenced the business side to your question, Moana, because when I think about the messaging that I used to get, it was pretty much you can do whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I
hmm,
had no clue. Like, I wasn't one of those people that knew exactly what I wanted to go and do when I finished college. In fact, I switched majors from chemistry to business, and like I had no idea. But for some reason, when I started as a trainee at State Farm, I started with an area I had knew nothing about, which was data processing. Like, what? I don't know what this is. I have to figure it out. Yeah. But every move that I made within the company after that, it was in normally in an area I had never done before.
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm,
and I don't know if this is where that, kind of that risk taking came into play, and that some of that confidence of like you can figure it out came out,
Right.
yeah.
because whether it's in diversity and inclusion, I had never done that before when I was the director. They're like, you're now the director of diversity and inclusion. I'm like, okay, like what
What
does
does
that
this
mean
mean?
exactly? Or you're in data processing, you need to learn how to program. I'm like, oh, okay, that's, or you're in claims now. Oh, okay, like I got to learn policy and all of that. So, I
Mhm.
think for those of you out there that really think about switching careers, or if you're thinking about like, can I do this? You don't need to check every box to be able to then move into something, that you want to try. So that's one of the things that I wanted
Yes.
to bring out in my career. I said yes without knowing a ton of information about what it is that I was going into.
Okay.
And I've heard that from multiple like folks in senior positions, that
Yes.
like I didn't know everything. I just said yes and figured it out along the way. And
Mhm.
it's I think it took me a while for like that to really sink in, because up to this point, until recent years anyway, I always thought I had to know everything about everything. And so,
Yes.
I kind of limited my own self because I never thought that I would be in the perfect right position um
Yeah.
to be worthy of that level. But just hearing other people be like, "Yeah, I didn't know. I just figured it out." I'm like, "Oh,
Yes.
okay."
And Dana, I mean, like you got like
And
six,
that's so true.
so like I'm sure you had to figure things out, right?
Yeah, especially being an executive assistant. You all these things that I end up adding into my resume were things I end up acquiring because of being executive assistant. Because literally, executive assistants is the be all. I literally said that they're the Walmart of the corporate world. You go up to the admin, and they cover a huge range of things. And I had, from that, I learned, event planning, because we're the ones who have to pay for it, have to coordinate, and sometimes it was stuff that we had to take on ourselves. So I ended up learning that through that role, and so many different elements of different things. And my photography what started off as a hobby became more part of my job and everything, because people found out I could do photography, and improving my photography skills and stuff because of that. But yeah, it's one of those that it's just like, and I actually never planned to become an executive assistant. After I got out the when I got out the army, and I was working in a call center environment, and my leader at that time, which was a woman, she was like, "Hey, I noticed you have a quick knack on a lot of softwares and stuff. You should think about applying for this office assistant position." And I was like, I have no background in that. She's like, "Go for it." And because she told me to go for it, I started that role, and I've been an executive assistant since.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's something that I'm hearing from both of you, which is, number one is that, let's face it, we're not going to know, we're not going to check out every tick mark. But as a woman of color, a lot of times what happens is that we want to check off every tick mark before we go for something. Where a white man, no.
Yes, exactly.
60%, and they're like, I'm qualified.
Yes.
Not even 60, they be at 30%.
Yeah, like every little, check mark. I say no. I say, you have an opportunity. You don't know until you try. So
Yes.
I think saying yes is a key in terms of, all of that. And I think, as I think about the last year and a half, and you heard me say this a little bit earlier when we were talking about what women are facing right now, especially women of color. And when I think about AAPI women, it is right now, it's a little brutal, because I just literally got the Stop AAPI Hate National Report. I just saw that today. It just got literally published. The national report covers 9,081 incidences from March 19th, 2020 to June 30th of 21. You guys, it was like 6,000, just over 6,600 from March to March. So when you look at the 2/3 of that reported is AAPI women, okay? That is huge. And if you talk about, 2/3 of that is verbal harassment, and 16.5% is shunning. And the deliberate avoidance of Asian American and Pacific Islanders. These are the two largest proportion of the total incidences reported. And I think about, if you think about the COVID-19 and what's happening to women in terms of the Stop AAPI hate, the hate crimes, and then you overlay what's going on with the job situation.
Yes.
We still have not, we had 140,000 jobs lost at the end of December, mostly women of color.
Yes.
And majority, if not all, women of color. And we have a lot to recover from that still. We've had some recovery, but we're not even close to the pre-COVID-19 pandemic levels for jobs. So I think about all of these things that the women are facing and what that means for future and what's going on. We really need to support women. And there's opportunity here, but there's some support that's needed. So I wanted to bring that out to the forefront because it is very important to understand kind of what is being faced by women and women of color and API.
Exactly. So kind of coming into that, how did you know it was the right time to leave your successful career at State Farm to lead the Center for Asian Pacific American Women?
I wish I could answer that and say, oh, yes, I knew, I got this vision. And no, it didn't happen quite like that. We were going through a reorganization like every organization. you've got a lot going on with restructure, and this is pretty common, right? With, Fortune 50, Fortune 100, Fortune 500. So, and to future proof the organization. So they went through a reorganization and they said, Sue Ann, you can have, we're giving you a job offer, but it is one level below what you're doing today. And so, and it was a job that, as a department head, I was doing that job for 9.5 years. So it was really hard for me to accept the fact that, the offer that I was getting was one job level below. And it hurt because I felt like I took that very personally. Now, from an organizational perspective, it was, they're doing what they needed to do. But from a personal impact perspective, it was very difficult. And I wasn't unique in that situation. So I had to decide, do I want to stay and do this job? And it wasn't even about the money, because I wasn't losing that much money, from that aspect of it. So it was about, is this truly what I want to do? Yeah. And I had no idea, what I wanted to do, because CAPAW wasn't even in the picture at that point. And so I really did some soul searching, and I decided I was going to leave. And they said, Sue Ann, you could do this, or you can take a package. And I said, you know what? After a lot of soul searching, crying and emotions and all of these things, to my parents, like chagrin, I left the company. I decided I was going to do something different. And I had no idea what it was going to be. So they were like, what? What are you doing? So I think it shocked them, because my parents are pretty traditional. So that was how it happened. It wasn't like this epiphany or anything. It was like, oh my God, and I remember sitting there waiting for my phone call from my boss. They're going by alpha order, and you could tell, the H's were coming, and I'm sitting there like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then when my boss told me that, I can't remember exactly. I think I blanked out after that news. So that's how it happened. It took a couple weeks to make that decision. And then, once I made it, it was just like a whole another process emotionally to process it all. So, but you know what? 2 days later, I got a call from one of the board members of OCA. And she's a board member of OCA and board member of CAPAW. And she said, hey, what are you doing? What, and I told her what happened. And she's like, well, have you ever thought about nonprofit? And I said, not really. Why? And she goes, well, we just lost our, executive director. How about stepping in potentially as interim executive director? So you guys, that's how relationships help. Those relationships and and I was so excited. At first I was in shock. I was like, what? So, but by the end of that week, that Saturday, I remember I accepted the offer from the Center for Asian Pacific American Women. And I was a graduate of the program, so I knew the organization.
Yes.
I was so excited I'm like, oh my God, I can help other people directly. And I got all excited, but it took a while to get there, because I was still grieving over my leaving the company at State Farm. But the beauty of that is they're a sponsor.
Yes. Full circle.
Here's the deal, you guys. Here's the deal. I chose what my value is. Okay. I'm not, people are always going to place value on you. Whether if you work for a company or work for somebody else, there's always going to be value put on you. You don't necessarily have to agree. Yes. You don't have to allow somebody else to determine what that is. You determine what that is.
Yes.
And so, but I did it still responsibly. I still went to a financial planner. I still did you got to run your numbers, make sure you're doing things responsibly. But at the same time, there was no roadmap on how to do it. So when I started a nonprofit, did I know how to run a nonprofit? No. I did not know how to run a nonprofit. I had to learn. I went from, here's my human resources department. Here's the L&D department. Oh, wait, that would be me. I am the department. I'm the I'm the tech person. Oh shoot, I gotta go YouTube it to figure out what I'm doing. Seriously, I mean, don't you guys figure these things out, right? I mean, I
Yes.
cannot be the only unique person who
No.
like sits there and go
Nope.
like, what did I just do? And how do I figure this out?
Yeah, that's like what we are and continue to do with the podcast. It's like, okay, how can we continue to build this thing and streamline it and make it so it's not as much of a burden on us? And like, what can we get rid of? Do we have to tweak things here and there to make it sustainable? Because I mean, at the end of the day, we all only have 24 hours, right? And
Yes.
Only if you go west, you get 3 more hours.
Exactly.
Six if you go to Hawaii.
Hours in
You
one
get
day.
6 more in Hawaii. Yes.
That's the only way you gain time. Yes, exactly. So I think that's a big lesson, you guys. One is that I had to say yes to myself. And I think that was a big lesson because I appreciated all of the lessons, some of the hard lessons too. I really did appreciate that because it forced me to make some choices where I wasn't depending on somebody to make the choice for me. Because had I got the same level offer, I would have stayed. I know myself. That was the safe bet. Right. And so that was the lesson for me is like, how do you make those conscious choices and you say yes to yourself?
Yes.
That's so profound.
And that tends to be something as women we have to, it takes us longer to learn that because we are so used to being told to stay behind the scenes, especially as Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander women, keeping yourself very humble, very, keep your mouth closed, just roll with the punches, let it roll off your back, whatever happens, because you're lucky to have the job that you're in. And we're starting to be in this generation and our future generations are shaking that.
Yes.
I call generational passing that down to every generation of women, telling us that we have to be like that. And I mean, even my own boss, she could tell you when I first started working for her, I stayed behind the scenes. I interacted when I had to. Even though I knew some stuff that I should be speaking on, I would not say anything. And she was like, I know you have. She pushed me, like she literally gave me a book for Christmas one year. It was like, forget being nice, get mad, get angry. Because she was like, I don't even know if Dana knows how to get mad.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is why the Center for Asian Pacific American Women exists because, this was back in 95 when Martha Lee, our founder, said, hey, you got Asian women who are, intelligent. They're, they have PhDs. They are very qualified, but they're not taken seriously as leaders. They're not at decision-making tables. So what are we going to do to support these women? So her and 18 warrior sisters came together. And, and they all like contributed like $100 a piece. She got like 100 women to contribute $100 each. And, she said, we're going to get rooted into our heritage, but we're going to bring these women together to help them, to support them. And by the way, some of them are grappling with their identity, and then also they don't have to be by themselves. Yeah. They don't have to do it by themselves. They can have a group, a support network of women who can be there for each other. And so that was really the whole principle. And the fact is, we have to really develop the woman, the whole woman. Yes. So the way I define whole woman for our organization is, yes, it's all about the intellectual. Yes, we get that. But the relational, financial. Okay, your relationship with money and wealth building, right? And as well as physical.
Yes.
To be able to do the job, you have to, are you physically fit to do the job, right? And as well as, I call it spiritual, but it's really about your mindfulness and your
Yes.
now it's like mental wellness,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
right? And your,
Yes.
just how are you handling it's the inside out job.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about the whole person, that's the way we define whole person.
Gotcha.
Are you
Yes.
addressing all of those things for the woman?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really important from my perspective that we do that, because the old days of, hey, leave your personal problems at the door. Like, how does that work?
Right.
Yes.
I don't have that luxury.
Yeah. How is that
Mm-hmm.
working for you as a mother, as
Yes.
a caregiver? And that's just not realistic.
No, it's not.
So I think those are some things that are very important. So right now we're doing something new. We did something new, and this was a conversation that the board and I had at the end of last year with COVID going on. They're like, Sue-Ann, yes, we are about AAPI women, but let's face it, women of color are struggling. So what are we going to do to support and share what we have with other women of color? So we started talking about that, and what does that look like? So it was interesting after March, the mass shooting in March that happened in Atlanta. I was literally at the community march in downtown Atlanta when I got a call from the Walmart Foundation. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm at the march. I'm actually with the community. This is the first time I've been out since a year and a half, right? And so we really had an interesting conversation. It's like, hey, you're already doing some work with women of color. What do you think about doing something specifically around fighting racism? And so I said, absolutely. And they're like, oh, one caveat, we will send you the link tomorrow and your proposal is due on Monday. So I had 48 hours to come up with the proposal. But you know what? It's so funny. Like call it, if you want to call it your, the universe, the spirit, God, whatever you I'm like, I already knew in my mind, like what I wanted, like for these women to have. So I worked on it. I submitted it, worked with the director, and we submitted it. And it literally launched June 24th. And we're into our 4th session. We have Asian women, Latinx women, we have Black women, and we have Native American women.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And I'm so, and by the way, I had to go find them all. Thank you to my incredible network of women and leaders who reached out far and wide to find these women. And we're just so thrilled to be supporting these women. Year 1 to 5, you guys, beginning of career, the broken wrong, where they really we need to make a difference in that beginning of career.
Exactly.
Did either one of you negotiate your salary at the very, very beginning of your career?
Not at the very beginning.
No, I didn't either. And I'm thinking, had I only known.
Yeah. And then it's so funny knowing how to do it too, because even like up until, recently, even when you apply for a job and they're asking you your salary, and then they'll come back, oh, well, that's too high on the scale. Are you willing to take a cut? Most women, you find out they'll compromise and take a lower cut than fight for, like a guy will be like, nope, if I take a cut, I gotta have this, and this and with it, and they get it.
Yeah, and here's why I'm asking this question, everybody in the audience. That's because we have, and this is pre-pandemic numbers, by the way, where you're talking about, AAPI women at 85 cents on the dollar. Like if you desegregate that, it's like you got women who are above the dollar, in that more of that professional tech field and that kind of. And then you have women who are making like 50 cents to the dollar, like Burmese women, Fijian women, and Hmong women. They're making so much less. It's ridiculous. It's not acceptable. So we have to negotiate. And guess what? That happens at the beginning of the year. If you take that 40 years, it could equate up to like $400,000.
Yep.
So there's actual math behind it. as far as
Mhm.
how much, think about it, every year that could be tuition. If you're talking
Yes.
yearly, tuition, whether your child can go to college. So
Yeah.
this is why I'm so passionate. Like, we've got to equip these women at the beginning of career with knowledge, with
Mhm.
networks, with
Yes.
support,
Yep.
and with know-how in terms of, understanding how to navigate, and not accepting just what's given and actually
Yes.
negotiating.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love this because I talk with my sister about this particular issue a lot. Like I have a niece who's just turned 10, and she's kind of learning a little bit about business because I've roped them into parts of my business and told them, hey, look, you can build your own and you can, Auntie will make the stuff for you and you can just, make your own sales, set your prices, whatever. Um, and, like we talk a little bit back and forth about what they're doing. And I'm like, okay, here's why I want you to reevaluate your price. Like you
Mhm.
need to understand all of the benefits that, your
Yes.
service provides or your product provides, what other people in the market are offering for
Yes.
their price, and why, if even having you, and what extra things set you apart from what's already there, so that you
Mhm.
can feel confident in your price. Because I know
Yes.
myself, as I was starting, my side hustle, there was like a lot of doubt and stuff in my head too. But over time, now I still get a lot of the same complaints, and I'm like, okay, well, if you want that, please go to Walmart because my stuff like it's not gonna fall apart tomorrow. I run a
Mhm.
clothing line, um, and I'm like, my stuff it's not mass manufactured. Like it's all
Yes.
made by me. It is, Hawaiian clothing line. You can't find this anywhere else, and it's a rare
Mhm.
commodity as well. And I customize things to people, like to
Yes.
lengths and things that we struggle with finding clothes. Tall people, oh my god, I can't find a dress that's long. Short people, oh my god, it's too long. But you have to kind of think about that when you're negotiating things and creating your strategy for however you're going to run it, very
Yeah.
much like in your career. But for me, like I never learned it till later. So if I
Yeah.
can help my niece to be like running in day one on the door, like boom, 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 this is what I want, this
Yes.
is why, and being able to articulate that, oh my god, my job
Mhm.
is done here. Like even if I can only hit one person, two people, like, but if we all play our part, the next
Yes.
generation of women of color, come on, I get excited
Exactly.
Absolutely.
about that
I'm
stuff.
totally with you, especially because both of you are entrepreneurial. And the fact is, you're creating your own path. And,
Hmm.
I'm learning, I had to learn about that because I wasn't really
Yes.
realizing that that was what it took to run this nonprofit.
Mhm.
It's like you're basically like acting like an entrepreneur,
Yep.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how to get funders or, I had to learn how to do all that.
Yeah.
And like, people were very, very helpful in sharing that knowledge, but somebody has to share that knowledge with you to understand
Yes.
how it
Exactly.
works, right? So when I think about the end game for these women, these young women that, for the end of the program, one of the two things, one is driving up their self-confidence level. And
Mhm.
the fact that we are working with a group called Relations Research, and they actually have a cultural anthropologist who is working, who is like talk to these women and really kind of talk through where they are today with their self-confidence level. And
Mhm.
then they're going to be, we're going to look at it like middle of the program and at the end of the program. And at the end of the program, the other charge is what are you going to do collectively to, ring out against racism? How can we amplify our voices together? Because now you've got an
Mhm.
allyship right here,
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so that's really kind of more of that community impact that we're looking
Yes.
for these women.
Mhm.
And I'm so inspired by these. I'm like totally in love with these women, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that they're just so incredibly, incredibly ahead of where I was when I was in college. I can tell you that when
Oh
I was
gosh.
graduate, I
Yes.
wasn't like where they were at.
Mhm.
And so I'm just very hopeful. And then the other thing is like specifically for AAPI women, I've got a whole program that I'm revamping for the Asian Pacific American Women's Leadership Institute that's launching in November.
Ooh.
And again, root in your heritage, be confident in where you come from. And first of all, you might have to discover what that is, by the way,
Yes.
Yeah.
right? And then how do you advocate for yourself and your community ultimately, and really, being confident in who you are and saying yes to yourself.
Yes.
So that's what's coming. And I'm just thrilled that, I'm like, I can impact more women. I can impact more people.
Yes.
That's what I want to do. And I'm so appreciative of just this forum to be able to even talk about it.
Yes. And I love the fact that you're teaching those things, because even for myself, being in the professional world as long as I have, there's still some of those aspects, like you said, negotiating, and well, the biggest part is asking for a raise and justifying that you deserve a raise. That is something that I'm still, I'm trying to figure out, and I know many women have that same issue. But then you also have the aspect of, like you said, knowing your worth, because I will see people when especially women, when they submit their resume, it is the most bland resume. And I will tell my friends and everything, I'm like, what all did you do? Don't give me that, the administrative duties. Do you know how wide of a range administrative duties is?
Yes.
What did you do? That you got to point out the stuff that you did that typically you would not see someone doing in this job,
Yes.
or beyond that title. And then they have to really think about it. And that's the thing that we're so used to, I call it humbling ourselves to be lesser than, because that's what we've been so trained to do. And then all of a sudden it's like, we know we deserve to get paid more, but we're not fighting for it. We're not stepping out. And then we also get, I call it, in the comfort zone, that you're staying where you are because you don't want to deal with the unknown, or trying to find another job unless you absolutely have to, or stepping up to another role that you feel like I don't think I'm ready for that job yet. And like you said, we have to check all the boxes before we even think about applying. And that'll be a whole another 10 years before we even do it.
Yeah, I think so I hate to boil this down to math, but Dana did it, so I'm going to point this out. So not basically, humbleness does not equate to not negotiating. Like that, that is like an equal sign not.
Yes.
With a not sign on it.
Exactly.
That because, there is that's not the same thing. Not speaking up is different than being humble, in my opinion. You can be humble and say, I did this, but we together drove this effort, and this is what we did. That is humble. But it still talks about what you specifically did.
Right.
Yes.
So I think we have to make sure that we're not confusing humbleness with not speaking up. Let's make sure that that's like, that's something we need to kind of distinguish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is the misinterpretations that unfortunately happen with the older generations, our great grandmothers and stuff, because they were given that perception that being quiet means being humble, not speaking up. Because I still remember being told, you don't brag. You don't brag because you have to show you're humble. But then as I got further in my career, I'm hearing from who my boss is a woman. She's like, you have to tell, because I won't know what all you've done. I only see, she said, 5% of what you do. You got to show me the other 95.
Yes.
That way, when I go before all the other executives who are all trying to justify why this person deserves that 7% increase, why this person deserves it, and you're fighting, she can go and say, look at all what she did. Look at all what she did. She's like, you have to. It's not bragging. You're stating facts. It's not bragging when you're stating facts.
So I used to say this to my employees when I'd have these group meetings. I said, first of all, your boss has a turkey platter of things going on.
Listen.
So your job is to help them out. Right?
Exactly.
They have no idea, like they know generally what you're doing. So you help them out. So when you're going in, how prepared are you about, bringing forth your accomplishments? And it helps them. It helps your boss, because they can't, like, they're gonna, like, I would pull the results from the tools that I have, but how it gets done, what you do, the behaviors that you're displaying, like, I won't always be there to observe it.
Yes,
So
yes.
that is, you're helping to inform your boss. To think about it that way, you're informing,
Mm-hmm.
and that is
Mm-hmm.
different than bragging.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
So that's what I was telling people. Was like, your boss is extremely busy. And by the way, they don't sit there and come in and go, "Ooh, I wonder what I can do to piss off my employees today."
Right.
You know,
Preach
help them
that.
out. Help them out. You know,
Yes.
and I was like, you guys really, I mean, really, this is what you think that, like, we get excited, you know, when we do something that makes our employees excited or happy or engaged, you know. And so a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times I think there's this misnomer about, if you tell me something I don't want to hear, or,
Yes.
you know, whatnot, that it's like, this is not the goal of the boss. Most bosses,
Mm-hmm.
most bosses want to engage their people, want to make their people happy, want to get them
Yes.
excited, want to make sure
Yes.
that they get, you know, recognized,
Yes.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I just say that because I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding about, you know, what the boss is trying to do.
Absolutely. And this is so timely because I'm actually dealing with this right now with we're kind of in evaluation season for my team.
Yes.
And one
Mm-hmm.
of my officers, she's submitted her first draft of her evaluation. I mean, and it's very factual, but I'm just like, this is not hitting the way, like, the word, like the work that you do. And this is only the little part that I know, right? Like,
Yeah.
you do so much. This needs to be like, we need to put more context. We need to frame this better. You need to describe the environment upon which you are putting all of this together. Um, because what
Yes.
she's doing is nothing short of freaking amazing. Um, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's like a conversation that I have always back and forth with my team. I'm like, okay, this is what we got to do because of this, and this. Now you got to align it to, like, the priorities of the organization. Make sure that you're hitting
Yes.
and you're calling it all out in your thing, and what you're doing to lead the team. What was your specific role? What was their
Yeah.
role? What did we
Mm-hmm.
deliver? Like, what's the impact? How is it benefiting the company? Like, all of those things, um,
Yes.
that
And
sometimes I think we just take for granted.
Moana, you
Mm-hmm.
bring something up that's very important, and that's context.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yes.
know, because that is a lot of times what is missing when people talk about themselves, when they present something, or, you know, how they present themselves in a meeting, or, you know, all those things. And by the way,
Mm-hmm.
AAPI Women, there was a study done with the Asian American Psychological Association, where they're like, one of the key findings for perception of Asian women, you guys, is that they're not seen as leaders. So guess what? The only way you're going to be seen as a leader is if you communicate through communication, right? That's
Yes.
another way you're going to be able to deliver on how you show up in the way that leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had periods of my life and my career where I didn't speak up enough. And
Mm-hmm.
people told me, Sue Ann, you got to come sit in front of the table. And I mean, I got, even as a department head, I had people, you know, bosses who told me things like that, where they're like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to sit up here. Don't take
Yeah.
notes for everybody. Don't, you are not the
Mm-hmm.
assistant. Like that, like I've
Yeah.
had all kinds of feedback like that too.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to bring that up. Moana said, I want everybody to hear what she said about context. Very,
Yes.
very important.
Mm-hmm.
So great point that you bring up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I had to learn too, because I remember early on in my career getting similar types of feedback, but I'm like, what are you talking about? But, like, as I have grown myself in my career and understand the bigger picture of, where my team falls into the larger organization, what our
Mm-hmm.
role is in driving the success of other parts, of the organization, that's when I'm like, okay. Like, it's great that we're doing our work here, but, like, how is it
Yes.
plugging into everything else,
Yeah. And
Yeah.
let me say something. I don't know who, you know, if, as far as the audience, what the makeup of the audience is, but let me tell you something to think about in terms of, as I was thinking about salary. There's, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, being an individual contributor is one thing, but if
Mhm.
you're working for a company, and large company, and if you're an individual contributor and you're not thinking about leadership, there's going to be likely a limitation on your salary potential.
Mm.
So the reason I bring this up, you guys, is if you want to close that salary gap, part of this is, are you willing to, you have thoughts about becoming, being in management at some point? Or because the more you can think through that, there's opportunity for, a broader salary range and some, earning power, things like that. So there's nothing wrong with being the technical expert. If that's your passion, fantastic. That's great. But if you think about in the individual contributor versus being in leadership, there's more opportunity if you go up, and that salary potential. So I bring that up just for something to think about. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. It
Yeah.
totally makes sense. I think one of the gaps between an individual contributor and a leader is understanding that when you do take those roles to be a leader, one of the first things you must develop is yourself, because it's no
Yes.
longer about you working in a vacuum. It is now more about how can you bring together different people, leveraging their strengths and their weakness to accomplish the common goal that you have, and being very mindful about your own contribution or subtraction to the dynamics on your team and how you're helping it all kind of mesh together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The further you go up, the less and less it becomes about you.
Yes.
Yep.
And the more and more it becomes about the people, organization, your customers. It's always about the bigger picture.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great point. And by the way, let me all tell you about executive assistants for a minute.
Listen.
Executive assistants have a lot of power. They have a lot of pull and they know a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So my thing is treat them well.
Treat them well and pay them more.
Well, because they know things, they will look out for you. I'm telling you, I've had
Yes.
experience here. But I tell you, they really can help you.
Yes.
Because they see a lot of things. They know a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
They are moving through the organization with a lot, they're coordinating a lot of things. They understand what's happening. So I just say that because I think sometimes we think because they're not an officer or whatever, like,
Yeah.
I'm like, you have no idea. They know things.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I just throw that out there to give a plug for executive assistants.
Yes.
Yes. Shout out to all executive assistants.
Yes.
Thank you for working your magic and making our world go round.
Yes.
Exactly.
And
And
if
I'm
you
I'm
don't have a
so
good
glad
one,
you
then
said
that
that.
kills you too. They make
Yes.
you break. I'm telling you.
And I'm so glad you said that, Sue Ann, because I have heard, and I'm part of an organization called International Association of Administrative Professionals, IAP, which is global. But you hear these stories from admins that are like, you know, they don't consider admins on the leadership level, even though you're managing projects, all these other things. My favorite was in one and at one position that a leader was talking to my boss and was saying, "Well, I think you give too much credit to the executive assistants. All they do is answer phones and make coffee." And I was just like,
That's like an old school. That's an old school definition, frankly.
yes.
It
But this
belongs.
was like in not that long ago. I mean,
Yeah.
this is in the in the the last few years. So
Yeah.
it's like,
So
is that really what you think your admin does?
yeah, that's kind of old school. And I tell you what, there's a lot of things going on right now from perspective of workforce and your admin. You better if you've got a good one, hang on to her or
That's
Yeah.
him.
right. Yes. Treat
You
them
know,
well. Treat
yeah,
them
treat them
well.
well. So here's one of the things that I want to make sure that I bring out. First of all, AA and HPI women, they need a lot of support right now, you guys, with
Yes.
what they're facing in their community, the whole anti-Asian hate, the job losses. So there's multiple ways you can support. One is, if you know of someone who is deserving of, whether it's, a promotion or somebody you can support, outwardly supporting them is very important. They need that outward support. Number two is, I'm always looking for support. I'm looking for women who are, if you're an executive, if you're, women who are, doing things that are like driving your own business in different sectors. I'm always looking for women who are getting, telling their story. So,
Yes.
I want to find these women and give them an opportunity for uplifting and highlighting them. And we did one panel recently. You guys were in that with the Native Hawaiian women, and we're going to do another one with Pacific Islander women panel with OCA National in October. But like, our goal is we need to see representation.
Exactly.
We need to see representation. So that's another thing. But apawomen.org is our website, and at CTRAPAWOMEN at Center Women. That is that's our handle for our social media. So definitely check us out. But I am just really excited about what we can do to support women, what we can do to make a difference. And I want to track these women for the long term to see where they end up. So
yes,
I think this is going to be, to me, this is life work. This is like,
absolutely,
kind of inspirational work for me. So I wanted to make sure to plug that, and to make sure that, that people know that I finally figured out my purpose, and I'm like honing in on it.
Yes.
Thank you for finding.
And we're so grateful for that too.
Yes.
And there's probably so many women that's been through your programs and what you all have done with the Center for Asian Pacific American Women, that they finally had, one, you helped them build that network. Two, you helped them get that arsenal so they can maneuver through the corporate world, or be an entrepreneur, whatever they are deciding to be, and they're giving themselves their voices that they have kept from being out there for so long. So I even know, from my own personal self, it usually takes a really strong woman. I'm very lucky to have one as a leader right now, but so often we don't have those within our jobs and our companies. And a lot of women, you see the potential, but no one else sees that potential. And unless you advocate and bring them up, no one else is going to see what they can do to be better the company and better your department. If you continue letting them be silent.
Yeah, we have to have advocates. You cannot succeed by yourself unless, and again, even if you're an entrepreneur, you can't succeed by yourself. You need help, right?
Yes.
So I think this is where, we need that outward support, sponsorship, right? Versus mentorship. And I think that's huge. But I do want to also, make sure that everybody understands there is hope, that I'm not looking at this as like, oh my God, we got all these things we've got to, overcome, and there's no hope. There is opportunity here, you guys. We can do this. We can support. We can help women succeed, and we're going to do it, like I said, one woman at a time.
That's right.
Exactly.
I'm not. I'm like interested in. I'm interested in long-lasting impact. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Same
Definitely.
Here.
Well, awesome. We are at the top of the hour, Sue, and of course, it's gone by so quickly. I know me and Moana didn't even dive into everything we wanted to ask you, but at the same time, we want to be respectful of your time. So once again, can you share with the audience how the people in the audience, one, can find the Center for Asian Pacific American Women, how they can support it, and then how they can recommend or lead women that they feel this will be a good fit for them to help them grow in their careers.
Yes, thank you. So the website is www.apawomen.org. And you can also reach us at info@apawomen.org if you want to send us a note and to let us know if there's somebody interested in the APAWLI program or that's being revamped for November. And if you are interested in the women of color, it's a pilot program right now, but I'm thinking this is going to go, my vision of it is it's going to be fabulous. So,
Yes.
we're going to keep continuing. And so, and then you can, we're on Twitter, Facebook, as well as Instagram. And I don't know how to use TikTok, even though they're a new sponsor. So I'm learning how to use
That's
TikTok,
awesome.
you guys. I'm like, what kind of videos do we need to do? I need some inspiration there. So yeah, those are ways that people can get a hold of us. And, I'd be more than happy to talk to women who are interested potentially in the APAWLI program or either program.
Yes. Awesome.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much again for being part of the podcast this evening. Definitely sharing your journey and helping others to learn how they can strengthen their journey within their careers and definitely giving themselves, learning how to give themselves a voice, especially our women within the community so they can speak up. And definitely look forward to learning more about the Women of Color cohort that you just started, the first of its kind, to see more about it. And of course, um, definitely when you're ready to start advertising for people to join it for the next year of when you're going to be accepting new people. So I love the many things. Definitely follow them on their Facebook page because they're constantly announcing upcoming panels and things that you can attend to learn more, just like how everyone you're joining us on this podcast, whether live right now or on the replay, to learn more about these movers and shakers within the community and the impact they're doing within the community. You can also learn another layer of that impact and learning more through her organization also. So definitely follow them. As Suan mentioned earlier, they had a panel on with Native Hawaiian on earlier this month, and they're going to be having one for Pacific Islanders. So definitely look forward to that so you can learn more and grow yourselves and then be more of that ally as our gentlemen in the audience that are watching, be that ally to those women that are in your life or to help boost them and be that sponsor and that mentor to help take them to another level, to help them in their career too. Moana, you have any last words you would like to say to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I just want to thank Suan. It's great to see you again. I really enjoyed our
Yes.
conversation, and I look forward to round two very soon. And
Yes.
for those who are in the audience, I know that you know a woman who needs this content. So
Thank you.
please share this video with your loved ones. Share it with the young ones if you have a young daughter who's starting
Yes.
to look towards a career and could use some guidance from women who have been there. Please share this panel and
Yes.
share
Yes.
Suan's contact information with them. Have them reach out because the success of our communities depend on the next ones coming up. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and follow us both on Twitch and YouTube. And yeah, that'll do it for us this week, and we will see you next time.
Exactly. Thank you again, Suan. Everybody have a
You.
great evening, and we'll see y'all next Thursday. And have a great evening, and definitely tune in next Thursday. I'm going to plug our guest for next Thursday at 7 o'clock. We're going to have LaWanda Richardson at 7 p.m. on the 19th, and at 8:30 p.m. We're very excited. If you tuned in July, we had a special guest, the first, the Yellow Power Ranger, Karen Ashley. She was on the show, and now we have who she passed her torch over to as the next Yellow Power Ranger will be part of our show next week. Nakia Bursey, she will be on our show next week. So you're going to hear from two powerful, amazing women, hear their stories, and definitely tune in for both that. So that's at 7 o'clock and 8:30 p.m. Eastern next week. So definitely look forward to having y'all next week. So everybody have a great evening, and we'll see y'all later. Bye.
Aloha.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If they won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, was a freedom then, when they annexed Hawaii and called it cedar lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves a republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand, yeah.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of CAPAWLI as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No regard for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if you put Hawaii into perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course. Cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of CAPAWLI as a part of their ongoing war with Asia. Used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No regard for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.